Hi, it's John Tommy Rosas, Ballona Wetlands. And this one's on the 1923 documentation. I made a transparency. It's very old, and I wrote over it, but I imposed it on the Google Earth. And it's 1923. Not everything lines up, but the important things do. But you can see I've got it in a transparency, atmospheric. So it's 3D, but there's some distorted lines and stuff, but you can get the main point, eh? This right here is the overlay I made with the government 1923 survey and USGS map. That's what all this is. These are my writing, and this is my graphic. This is the Ballona Creek. In 1923 and before, it was channeled just enough to get it past this one area. And right at the Culver electric where they used to run the train through, and some of that's still here, they had it dumped off right here. This is fresh water. This is not salt water that now goes up that way because this is all so low. And it goes, and I actually got a measurement now, it's 2 miles from the shoreline at high tide up the Ballona Creek channel. So what's important about that is when they talk about restoration in 1923 and actually before, about 1906 to 1909 and then 1920, they had various lawsuits and cases. So this got realigned and different things happened. But on this USGS map, what's important is the federal government determined that the channel should run and stop here, and this is their mark there for fresh water that comes down is let go into the freshwater wetlands that was already existing. It did not go through like it does now into the marina. See, now it goes, and then the high and low tides come up it. Before, see the difference right here, right at area A. Right here, you can see that creek line. And so the original Ballona Creek was here, then they channeled it, but they still dumped the fresh water here. They did not mix it or inundate this with more salt water like they want to do in alternative 1, 2, and 3. This is about fresh water. What's important on that is that if it's restoration and the Army Corps and the federal government felt like it was important for these wetlands, and this is their marks, to stay that way. Here was a freshwater source, and we had the Sentinella Creek that came through, basically right here. So the water might be here, but this is actually lower, and it used to go towards Playa Vista, which is all this right here and down here. So this is very low, and all the wetland markings. This is all fresh water, and then you can also see the saltwater little channels that were here for the estuary. So really the estuary, which is a salt and freshwater mixes in this area, way down here. This is way down here. And when you look at the transparency, let me back it off, over what's there now, right? Where the salt pan is and this and that, that's pretty much how they drew it, right? Let me change the transparency again. But they only had the salt pan here and maybe here. But for this video, what's important is that freshwater marsh up in here, not saltwater like they want to do in alternative 1. So this shows that it was existing, and that the Army Corps in their graphics, in their map, and their design and everything to dump the water right here was for fresh water. So that's why in my graphic I'm saying 1923 USGS shows freshwater wetlands, estuary, and freshwater source, sorry, misspelled it, from Ballona Creek. This is still really actually a creek, even though it was channelized. It did not go to the ocean like I explained, and it also shows the saltwater areas which are down here. right? This is all, you know, undisputed saltwater area. But for them to say they're restoring up in here in area A, which is all the way to here, and pretty much straight down to here, again, look at the graphic transparency under Google Earth. Here's area A. So they want to rip all this out and then have that be saltwater treated, and it was never like that. And what's important about this video and what I'm explaining is that it shows that this was freshwater before, but it was made purposely freshwater restored again by the freshwater restoration of the channel. So they can't say that they're restoring anything. If they're going to restore it, it should be to this alignment and this source of water, which we can get from Playa Vista's freshwater forest right here. You know, it's right here actually, sorry. It's right here, and we can show the, I'm going to make a graphic on the pumping, but we can restore that freshwater source. So, what does that mean? In the EIS, we have to go for the freshwater alternative, because this proves that it needs to be back in here like it was. I'm going to try and change that transparency a little bit. Back in this area, like I'm saying, just like it shows here, you can see I've got this lined up with Google Earth the best I can. Jefferson and the creek don't line up, but this intersection is pretty much lined up dead on. So you can see that this had originally fresh water, we know historically, but also back to 1923, which really isn't, you know, although it's, you know, 94 years, but that's what was supposed to, you know, continue. And I think that's what we have to hold to. And the Army Corps made this determination. So they can't get permits to tear in the 408 scheme they made with the county and the 404 with the Fish and Wildlife and the BWER here to change it into salt water. So what I have here is the alternative one. I'm doing the opaque on that. And you can see where they want to inundate this with salt water. But this will not be what was there before. That's my point. You can see their alternative, and then you can see what was there before existing. And this is my polygon that I show that this is basically a freshwater area, according to their old map, which I already showed you, from 1923. So this is pretty significant, I think. And when we go back to this alternative one, you can see, let me crank this around a little bit. You can see that where they're jumping, when they're saying flow here is fraud, because the salt water will be there. There's never going to be any flow that way except for the tide. This is not a freshwater flow. They say Ballona Creek flow like it's coming down, but where's the source? This green area is all going to be in salt water, because we know the tides go up to 10 feet. And they're going to have to dig this. I did some math on that. It's quite a bit of material. I'm closer to my 6 to 9 million cubic yards of material. So that's the deal with this one. I'm going to put the salt water in green. So I think the saltwater estuary definitely is in here, right, where these things are. Okay. And what I'm saying is that, and there was a blend in here. You know, the salt pan goes over here. So yeah, it moved around with storms, and then how much water came down the channel here, right? This is fresh water in here, and it's going to this freshwater area, the wetlands. This is all fresh water here. Centinela Creek's right here. Water went this way, it went this way. You know, it mingled and created, that's the estuary mingled there. But this area A part, you know, it's fresh water. This whole area it had to be predominantly fresh water, and that's why their whole scheme is not just wrong, but it's not honest with what is historically documented. The freshwater used to come right through here. It never went like it did now, and that would be restoration. 1923 map, you can see on the graphic. Thank you, and please support in the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve, EIS, CIR, the freshwater alternative to be made. They haven't done one, and to not approve or use the alternative with saltwater, because that is not restoration for this area. None of this. None of this has salt pan. This is all fresh water, and we should keep it that way. So thank you very much. Bye. It's John Tommy Rosas with TATTN. I'm making a video on the freshwater alternative that I came up with. This is the graphic. Has a freshwater, which is the blue, and the green, which is the plants, and then the darker green, like this, is trees. So it's just kind of a arrangement that would work there with one pipeline, and it shows that this is the pipeline system. It wouldn't be that big, but I wanted to keep the same amount of flow going. Anyway, we would have a pump station running through a Driscoll line, probably about a 4-inch diameter line, and it would run all the way through and have sprinklers and rainbird larger sprinklers, so it pretty much cover all the area. That's why I ran it through this. It won't be like a creek that runs. It'll just be pooled areas that lets everything be there. You know, small wetland freshwater plants, larger ones, medium size, and then willow trees and whatever else, you know, coastal oak, you know, the usual stuff. And I think that would be important. This graphic is the trees on Area A that I made on a 3D program, and it's imposed on there. You can see they're animated, but you get the idea. The trees would be involved in that graphic right here. And I made a Google Earth video. Area A as it is now, and then here is that overlay, and you can see it slowly increasing in the blue and green as I go down and make it more visible. So I'm guessing this would be like in the first year we would have a little bit of everything. I think we'd have to bring in willow trees, but I think it would be some planting. So in the first year or two, it would be looking like that, and then a couple of years more, it would be, you know, thicker. The water would settle in and start pooling in this configuration or something like that. This would be when it would be completely finished. You can see the water coming from the freshwater farce. The pipeline would go through there and then feed all this, like I explained. Now, we try to maximize this Area A as a whole, and all these palms and all the cleanup from SoCal Gas would have to happen to get their and Sempre to get their oil, you know, infrastructure out and cleaned up. I'm just kind of flying around and showing you the kind of how it would look in different places. What kind of looked before and what it looks like, what it looked like after we got the fresh water in there. It's a huge difference. And there'd be trees. You can't really see how the tree heights would be, but this is just kind of the footprint of it. But it would be a big increase in habitat and of course the animals and all that. And that would be the best way to restore that area A. And it also can include parts of B. Hi, this is John Tommy Rosas with TATTN combination about the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve draft EIS, EIR. And I want to talk about the levees and how they're going to block the view, which is a violation of coastal act, showing this deceptive creek and the water ending here, which is never going to happen. The tides come in too high and low. Hitting low tide is passive. So this artist rendering is way off. But they're projecting this false information is what I'm trying to explain. That the levees are shown to be way lower than they are. You can't even see them here. It looks like this is lower, which is actually reverse of what is true. They also show these ponds, and there's no source to them or connection with the saltwater intrusion. So they're inferring and basically asserting that these are freshwater, ponds, and there's a number of them because the water color is different. So if we look at here, 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 over here, these are the same color, and they're freshwater, and that is not in the EIS at all. There's only salt water, and this is deceptive because, like I said before in the other video, this will never happen. This whole area will be full of salt water right to the edge of the levee, the embankment. But this is not accurate. But for them to use this and have the artists draw this in a deceptive manner, show their pattern and behavior, which is criminal in my mind, but just expressing my opinion. You folks can look at the information and decide for yourself. Okay, I'm moving to the next one now. This is on the view blockage of the levees that they don't have any graphics on, so I've made these the view alert and the street view. And I've put these polygons in to show the basic height. Right where these light poles are, that's about 20 feet. And the levees will be that high or more, as I put here. And that applies to all of it that I'm showing you. But this is just to give you an idea of that normally you would be able to see from the road. This is Jefferson, and this is PCH Lincoln. This is looking kind of west, northwest, but in this direction. So that's an issue, and that includes pedestrian, bikes, and cars. And that's what I'm showing here, how large they are, because the state FEOC and the feds didn't put any descriptive graphics to show the visual blocking of the levees and the height. And there's some other issues with the levee being there. They're not going to be right on this close. They're going to be in a little bit. But I couldn't do the graphics in the scale that need to be. So I want to get the height right. And they are angled more, but just to give you an idea, the blockage will be the same. So that's why I did the graphic like they are. But I think you can understand what the concept is here. So that's what you will not see, and that's what will occur in the little levee. Alt 1 levees and they're blocking, and that's forever. I mean, that's not going to change. This is looking toward that same area. There's the Culver Bridge, and right behind this, back this way, is the Fiji Way and Lincoln intersection, electrical utility, which should be power line. So the open space will be lost. And if they build up over here, you'll also see a change on area C, which is this side. But I'm just making the graphics for this side for now, because this is where all the big levees are. So This is on BG Way, right near the end of it, where it loops around, and the harbor's on this side, the marina, and this is area A, and it shows that this is about 20 feet right here. So you will not see from BG Way the wetlands anymore either. And that's one of the nicer views when you go down BG Way. You can see it in, well, there's fencing and bushes and trees, but you can still see it. The Jefferson and where it hits Culver, this is really open in here. And I made the polygon so you can see through it. It's kind of semi-transparent. But that view will be gone forever. And you know, with 2-story, it's just, you know, huge, and it's for tsunami. There's no need to have it that high above this grade. That's only for tsunami. You know, nothing else around is like that. So it's for tsunami protection for flight risk. This is right past that intersection going down Culver. This is looking, you know, basically east, going towards Culver, going inland. And this is what the obstruction will be by the levee. You will not see it on this road to the end where the bridge is, and that's a dangerous look if you're driving. This is a violation of coastal act. They can't obstruct views in the coastal zone, and especially this type of one. Okay, this is Admiralty Way and Fiji, and this is the obstruction there. And like I said, these light poles are right at 20 feet, and the levee's going to be inside of that, but you can see the amount of obstruction. You will not see the wetlands like the camera. This is just past that intersection on Fiji, and it'll show I'm showing the levee here, the obstruction and the view. And of course it continues all the way around. It's not just here, it's all the way around the perimeter. And you will not see the wetlands anymore from the road. And I'm going to do the math, but it's in miles of obstruction, but it's about 3 miles. It's a long way, and that's a lot of obstruction to put on everyone. The wetlands and the last bit of nature on this side of town. I appreciate you folks weighing in on this. That we should have a freshwater alternative, which we're working on. Freshwater could be provided to support the freshwater alternative and the habitat for the animals and all the plants and all that needs fresh water there. It's taken it from me for the last, you know, few years. Anyway, thanks for watching it, and pass it around if you'd like. John Tommy Rosas with TATTN Media Productions, making another video about the Ballona Wetlands, Ecological Reserve, DEIS, DEIR, graphics, and the defects in them. I'm going to start with the grading plan, just an overview of just a couple of details. These lines right here are the levees. These are main levees that go against basically BG Way all the way to Lincoln. There's Lincoln right here, PCH. And then that levee will continue from Culver against where the channel is now, basically where the bridge starts. Is going to wrap around and go this way. I don't know why they have a levee here unless they've got 2 levees, but they're going to stockpile material here. They have it here and here, but this is confusing. It may be a raised area, so that may be like a double levee, extra wide. That's about 200 feet across. Anyway, here's the main levee that's on the north side and northwest side of Culver. It goes through there, all the way down to here to the channel. And they're cutting out the existing channel from here all the way to here, basically. Right here. And here's Lincoln, so there'll be about 200 feet of channel. But you will not see the wetlands anymore, except a shot through here, and you won't see it from the road because these levees are 25 to 30 feet above the road in varying lengths. They have to be leveled, and the ground isn't level, so there's a miscalculation by them on their cross section, and I'll get into that, where they have different levels, including the water level. On the restoration alternative 1, and this is a grading plan for alternative 1, even though these drawings were done in 2012 and before, and 2013 updated. So this was after, just as a note, this was after the notice was out for the EIS, so they changed the drawings even after the notice went out, and they worked for 5 years, so a lot of work had been done. But the you know, it's whatever. It's just some details. Anyway, the main grading is going to be in area A, which is across here. That's where the channel would be now, and then all the material from Lincoln to Fiji Way all the way around, basically around the south end of the marina. And then they're going to carve out and excavate and apparently remound it. They're going to leave SoCal Gas's thing here for some reason, and historically that's the only place the salt pan existed. There was no salt pan or no saltwater intrusion in this area, and that's what they'll do when they perform this, if we let them have that agenda and that alternative. What I'm explaining here is how much material they're going to take out and move. They call it relocating, but I know that they told me personally that that was a Mary Small and some other people at a meeting about almost 9 years ago, that they were planning on selling the dirt to the port, so the port could build larger shipberths in the San Pedro Bay. They use steel, Tubman steel, corrugated, and then they pump out the water and they fill it with dirt and they create a big shipberth. They've done those before. They're basically artificial islands. But I have plans that show their haul routes and how they're going to barge it down the channel and then tugboat it to San Pedro and the port of LA. But because that's the only way they would get that much dirt. The report's calculations are just under 3 million cubic yards. So a cubic yard is a yard cubed. If you picture that much material, they're talking about 3 million of those, and basically that's a square mile 10 feet tall of dirt, if you want to do your own math, but it's just to give you amount of material. And that's why this is off, because if they do this excavation and this formation that they're talking about and all this material, my math is that it's closer to 6 on the low end and 9 on the high end, so figure 7 in between to 8. So it's double and a half more than they're talking about, especially when they're talking about stockpiling here on Area C north and Area C south, and stockpiling some of these other areas. But there's a lot of material that's going to have to be moved around, and they don't talk about how they're going to deal with all the animals and habitat that's here now existing. So that's another issue I have. But anyway, this is mostly about the grading and how much material you're going to move. These lines are contour lines, and so they're saying this is the very bottom, but I'm saying that the water will be always at a height around this middle line right here between just below the levee starts, these embankments. So this will all be full of water. This creek thing they have at the bottom is ridiculous because the tide goes way past Sentinella if people live around here, and that elevation will fill all this up. So this is, again, like I stated before in the first video about this is about a tsunami zone and a tsunami protection area for Playa Vista, which they conveniently widened out right here. The Playa Vista development's right here. They showed all the harbor infrastructure, but they widened out Playa Vista for whatever reason, like they did before. They were putting legends and things and covering up Playa Vista. But that's the only reason they would have a containment area for a tsunami coming right through the channel in the harbor inlet, which is a good low area for a tsunami to come through, either from the southwest, the west, or the northwest, which are the strongest potentials for tsunami occurring between 3 to 30 feet like we witnessed in Japan. Now, these heights, and what they learned in Japan is that the surge wasn't calculated, and so a lot of those Japanese tsunami walls and bulkheads that were built in failed, and then the water got trapped behind them. And so what they're hoping for is the tsunami's going to come through here, get diverted, and then some of it will go through here and then be diverted in this catch basin and the detention basin, and then a balance of it will shoot up the channel, which will be still there, and that will virtually protect all the new development, especially the commercial development in Playa Vista that's there now. Billions and billions of dollars of industrial and commercial companies. There's a lot of big time, everyone that made a deal with them is there now, including LMU now, and they were part of the scientific committee, the so-called one allegedly, that came up with a lot of this falsified information and so-called scientific data. A lot of it will be disproven in my testimony. It'll be a declaratory testimony with graphics and a lot of historical information I have. So anyway, this is the excavation plan. I haven't altered it. This is their exact plan. It's in the DEIS. So I'm going to go to the next one. This is the grading cross-section of the new levees, and there won't be any trees this close. It's not allowed under the Army Corps levee thing, but it's misleading that they're going to plant this. Most of this will be in salt water, or the ground will be contaminated by saltwater intrusion, which it's never had before, and nothing's going to grow there except maybe kelp and some of those grasses that grow like they have at Oxford detention basin. So this is the side view. They're showing this at about 15 feet, which there's no place in the whole drawings that we looked at on this one that show that it's 15 feet, so that's falsified. This is 20 to 25 at a minimum that it has to be, and then that depends on the grade that's existing. So it's misleading, but regardless, at the base of any of those levees, there's going to be about 10 feet to 15 feet of water up, straight up. So that's why this won't work even for a tsunami protection, because that only leaves, that water will still be there, and then the tsunami goes over it, and then a 3-meter tsunami will top it. So, and that isn't even figuring the surge and everything. So this isn't even going to work for a tsunami thing for Playa Vista's flood control projects that they built in the wetlands. Here's the third page, which is the cross sections of the temporary fill, the stone or soil cement reinforcement they're going to have to put in, the grades that jump all around. You see different grades here. they're showing the Fiji wayside, you know, being 5 and 6 to 1 ratio. That's because the levees, like it says here, the levees have to be that angle now because of Katrina. So they can no longer put in the steep ones like were first planned, that I pointed out weren't compliant to the Army Corps regulations. And so they've had to make these larger. And some of these, as you can see here, it's 120 feet. And then if you add another 30 feet or 50 feet right here, that's 170. And then there's another, you know, probably 75 feet. Some of these are almost 300 feet wide in total. And then they show this falsified drawing of the channel, but the elevation's way off. The tide can move 10 feet with extreme low to extreme high, and they have it at 9, but it's closer to 10 or 11. And they're showing it like if they dig it deeper, the sea level didn't drop with it, which is untrue. The sea level didn't remain the same. They could dig it 100 feet. The ocean's not going to run out of water to fill it up. So the true elevation is more like I said, that water's going to be up in here. It's another, this is misleading and they haven't broken off here. This one's more accurate, but they show the water going up at 5 to 1, but it's going to be even higher than that. And even here they show it at about 11 feet, like I was saying. But their baseline is way off because that's the one they're going to dig down, and that's irrelevant to the regular low and high tide and how that will move up. And that they also based it on a south swell variation, which we hardly have or have hardly any effects from that because of the way the bay is facing, and Palos Verdes pretty much blocks it off. So they didn't do any southwest swell, west swell, or northwest swell variants, which will shoot more water in naturally from storm swell and wind-driven waves. So, and those can be 10 to 15 feet. So this hasn't been presented properly, and I think it's been done intentionally and purposely to accelerate and demonstrate that their agenda can justify this. The other thing I want to point out, these areas never had salt water, none of them. So in doing this, they're also generating a large amount of contaminated area that can never be restored to fresh water that's existing there now and always has. If you saw the first video, it showed the saltwater boundary and the freshwater boundary, and I'm going to make a video on that, but I just bring that point up that these will be wrecked forever, and nothing's going to live here, including all the animals that will be killed or lost to roadkill or try to move, or they're going to trap them, which will be basically killing them. So there's no wildlife solution on this. There's no created wildlife corridors. And all of this will be a huge violation to the Migratory Bird Treaty that's international. So that's another international law and federal law that I'll be using to stop this alternative 1, alternative 2, or even 3 action. Our tribal preference is the freshwater just being restored to the land as it's existing, put some pipes in and pump it in there, purify the water from the Plivista freshwater forests, and then possibly from the county's new 3 disinfecting clean water stations. Instead of taking it to Hyperion, they'll bring it to down the channel and run it through that same Driscoll pipe and can dump it into area C, both sides, area A and part of B. And I'll do a whole video on that with some graphics I'm working on that. But anyway, let's go to the next one. So this is another elevation that they're trying to show is going to work. on area A. The scale so far off, it's really not usable, but it's intentionally out of scale. The scale is way off, and it's not even enough that you can make a good representation of it or understanding of it. These amounts, a pencil line is basically 2 feet thick. So that's the problem with the scale on these, just to keep that in mind. So this is another one where that shows the amount of material they're going to take out, way out of scale. That doesn't look like much, but that's about 10 feet below or more of area A. And that's a lot of material. It's just a lot. Even this, there's no place that exists in area A like this. So I don't know where they're getting this section. You know, it just, the area A is below the levee. So here's the levee on the south side. They're not showing the levee on the north side of the channel. And to show this like this is insane, except that even the buildup that they're proposing isn't this large. So a lot of these are misrepresentations, and they have a lot of explaining to do why they did them, and then they did them in this poor scale. Again, these are their original ones. I'm not altering them. But you can see that this is supposed to be the flow right here. It even says it. There's no flow there because it's full of seawater. And they don't show that. And this is very misleading. It's completely false. The flow, there's no flow down Ballona Creek except for a storm. And the salt water is still way the hell up here. And salt water doesn't mix with fresh water very easily. So the fresh water is always on top. But they're not showing the true seawater level, which is going to be most of this green. This will all be seawater. From here, all this green will be seawater at low tide, and it will go all the way to this darker green line change. This will all be salt water on high tides and storms. And then if there is a storm event coming down the channel, then it'll be on top of this. But this will never ever occur because of the salt water and the tide change. And they don't show at all on these drawings a tidal prism, which is basically the difference of the high tide and the low tide, and it creates a triangular prism that goes up this long, slow grade. So, and the ones they do talk about is not accurate in my view. But anyway, that's my 2 bits on that. But this is the problem where they've misleaded the public in these graphics, and including the flow and the falsification of what these are. You know, if let's say they have it with no tide and if there is a flow here, then how are these supposed to work? I mean, these have to be even lower for the water to go down there, which isn't shown on their drawings. So it's just not, it's not even close to being accurate. It's just pathetic. But for $12 billion plus that Mary Small from the Coastal Conservancy spent on this, with her agenda to deal with Playa Vista's, which was right here, their flood control and tsunami zone issues. And like I said before, the only beneficial use is this this detention basin for Playa Vista to get less, you know, get their flood insurance cheaper and have some tsunami protection, which they're going to start making people get tsunami insurance, or they need to try to get it because of all the commercial and residential interests they got here. But when they talk about, and Mary Small talked about to me and tried to justify this, you know, 10 years ago, that it was about sea level rise. Well, they're exaggerating that because this is increasing the impacts of sea level rise by letting more seawater in now. I mean, this is making it worse than if we wait for the sea level to rise, and it's not going to affect this. If the channel's there, it'll just keep going up the channel higher. It won't contaminate all this area that never had seawater before into a saltwater treated area, and it'll also affect the aquifers. And I know that when they cored the 265 holes out here to justify this, they found groundwater, especially in this area where the historic freshwater wetlands and marsh was, that the levels even now are 5 to 10 feet. So it also kind of shoots down their fill falsification of the current status of that land, because the groundwater wouldn't be that close. If they're saying there's 20 foot of fill, like she's told me, and they show in their graphics, well, why is the groundwater 5 feet away? That isn't artesian water. It's a still part of a existing shallow aquifer that's fresh water. And again, if they put the seawater in, they're going to contaminate it. But anyway, that's my 2 bits on this one. So thank you. Hi, it's John Tommy again. This is video 7. This is on the land ownership issues, and I discussed those in video 5. But this is a little bit more detailed. Some of these are the same documents. I'm just going to skip through these. They show the history of the flood control, but they don't talk about the ownership. They talk about the jurisdiction. And that matters because in ownership there comes jurisdiction. Jurisdiction can be occurring there again on that property in various forms. Some of it was through fraud, and I think it's still ongoing, so there's no statutes on continuing fraud. So that'll be coming up in my filings against this DEIS, EIR. But, and some of this is my evidence stuff, so that's why these documents are kind of mixed. But anyway, so this document shows the history, like I talked about, and this one is an interesting one for the, hang on, I gotta move this over. This is a copy I have of the original marina design and the inlet to the harbor. It was even before they called it Marina Del Rey, it was Playa del Rey Inlet Harbor. It was a Playa del Rey estuary. That was the name when Venice had it, because Venice got it from LA or vice versa from the state. And I think the state granted it to Venice, and then Venice granted it to the city of LA. And then somehow the county made a deal with the city for the marina. It does matter on this. This is a clean copy. John Davis has a copy, but it's not the same. And my pages aren't backwards, upside down. You can tell by this detail. It's a different scan that he has. But anyway, he's done some great work. So this shows the memo that signed off about it. You know, the information, the dates. It's important. It ties in, and just kind of bear with me. Again, this is another technical document on the wetlands, and it does apply. People go, what the hell are you talking about the harbor for and the marina when talking about the wetlands? Well, it was all one thing. And the mangling by the Army Corps and the feds is consistent in this. So if you care about it or care about the history, then this is a good video to watch. If you don't care, then don't watch it. I'll tell you right now, it's a little bit technical and legal, but I'm trying to make it, you know, understandable because it's complicated and complex, and but it's important. That's where all the ammo is, and all the facts are, and the truth, whether we like it or not, the process, how it occurred, and what the justifications are, and what they're trying to do now. See, we're reliving history and what the EIS is purporting now in the saltwater intrusion versus no freshwater alternative, which is completely unethical, but also incompetent and defective and illegal. But we'll take care of that. Anyway, so there's a letter, from the Corps, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of drawings. I didn't put those in here because they don't matter now. But let me just flip through these real quick. And here's the act of Congress that is being thrown around a lot. The 780 and 54, 389 was also part of it. And it's different alterations and amendments. So that's important statutory wise because that's where the laws came in on. And when people don't understand which laws apply, there's a lot of them. Flood Control Act, these, the harbor. Some of the laws have changed since this has been going on, but there's kind of a transfer. So, yeah, that's why it's important to do this. Now, something that I want to bring up here is that the levels of the water, and these are pretty accurate, I feel. And they go against the Mary Smallman Coastal Conservancy map. Because if you look at this, it says that they would be doing linear links for the dredging of the entrance and the main harbor, the channel. That's a lot of material of about, it's over almost 2 miles, miles 5,280 feet. So this is almost 2 miles of length of those, units of creating the channel in the different marine inlets for the boats to be, moored or anchored. So the depths are 20, 15, 12 below water level. Well, it says lower low water. So that's like low tide. Now, providing that over a mile revetment along the banks of the entrance and channel, and depositing about 7.5 million cubic yards of material dredged for the engine on low areas within the adjacent of the harbor. Now, a lot of this went to the beaches, and it was slurried. So when they say there's 3 million on area A, that's completely false, because I think a lot of it went to area C south, because the levee is level with area C south, where they have the baseball fields that are illegal. Fly Vista was supposed to relocate them, and they didn't, and I have it in writing, so that's another crooked thing that Fly Vista pulled. And I'm talking about Fly Vista development, and the owners and including Hughes was still involved up to 2012. I have that in a bankruptcy document. So they were involved in that in the bluff. So the Hughes heirs were still involved, Howard Hughes, and the investment, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, all them. Even after the TARP, they were still involved. So the Platte Capital Corp, it's a shell corp for a bunch of other, mangled investment agencies that have made money, corporations that have made money off this. But anyway, so they had that, and I have the document from Hughes and SUMA where they gave a temporary easement for them to dump the material over there to use it. But they didn't load up area A like they claimed, very small, and the Coast Conservancy claimed that. What they have done is put a huge amount, and I'm going to do the math on what's at area C south. And so, and I think the rest went to the beach, and there might be a little bit on area A, but not that much. But this is the total. And even this, it might be less because they had to build up the molds and all that. But this gives us a benchmark. That's my point. This is about the fill, and why this is important in the wetlands restoration BS is that they claim there's almost 3 million cubic yards of fill on area A. which is impossible because the levees wouldn't be exposed, they wouldn't be so flat, and they almost have the same elevation that were surveyed before. So that's just and that's just a justification to dig it up and excavate it, kill all the wildlife off, and then bulldoze it, and then put saltwater intrusion. And if I sound negative, it's the truth of it. And this is a battle, so if you don't like my tone or you don't like my train of thought, then don't watch the video, but I'm just telling you straight out, that's what it is. Anyway, these are the math and the, you know, just a reference. I'm trying to go through this quick, because, well, this doesn't matter right now. But this document shows the design, what was supposed to happen, authorization, you know, all the important criteria that still lies there, and it did overlap onto the channel, because they ended up moving it next to the jetty that was already there. And so, and that was both their federal Army Corps projects. You know, the local corporation, that doesn't mean they own it, like the county has it. It means it was a federal project with coordination from other federal agencies in the county. And this was a federal project with federal land ownership and federal jurisdiction. And that applies to the wetlands because the feds, you know, did eminent domain on that. So I'm going to get into that more. But this is the federal project part of this. So that's important just as a historical background. Talks about the design, you know, dredging, you know, back and forth. I know they used a lot. That one showed they were predicting 13 million 5 cubic yards would be dredged. 5 basin A, 10 feet. But they built a lot of the molds, and then they built all the way to Lincoln, which was Roosevelt Boulevard then. And they changed the name, PCHs, but they built, if you look there, you'll see the buildup, and that's a lot of material. They even had archaeological concerns during this, because they did find this one, when they did the channel, they found a human skeleton and mammoth bones, both of great age, were discovered. Well, we know the human skeleton was the LA man now, and the carbon dating is 23,000 years old. So it was a known archaeological area, and we have our archaeological and cultural resource issues with this project and the lack of reporting that's non-compliant to the current laws. Anyway, just a good note, back in '56, and I can't find this Park Service letter, but they were concerned about it. But they knew it was, you know, important. And since then, there's the Ballona Lagoon Archaeological District. That's a federal designation that's been put in place. So even though the Corps skipped it a lot, it's real. Real estate requirements, blah, blah, blah. These are all right-of-ways. And here we go back to the beach, submerged land at the sites of the jetties and entrance channels are under jurisdiction of the city of LA by grant and lease from the state. That's what I was talking about from the Venice thing. A narrow strip, blah, 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 levee, jetty, creek, because it's owned by the, it says it's owned by the LA Control District, but that's inaccurate, it seems to me, because the feds actually condemned it. Well, let's say this is true, okay? Let's say this is true right here. Damn, if I can do this. might not work. Let's say that's true, that the flood control channel is owned by the LA County Flood Control District. About 780 acres of property owned land within the project taking line. So they're taking something, right? The county, which now creating blah blah, will purchase and condemn the area required for the harbor site. How could they do that when it was federal land? And the city still had ownership. So, to me, let's go back to this thing though. If the channel is owned by the flood control district, how did Playa Vista sell it to? How did the flood control district sell to Playa Vista, or let's say SUMA, or let's say McGuire Thomas, or let's say Playa Vista Capital Corp? How did they sue and then, sell it after there was lawsuits on this and the condemnation, like I showed in the video 5? And how did they illegally sell it or transfer it to Playa Vista to sell it to TPL in the state? See, this is a big deal, because if that's true, then that's fraud, and still Playa Vista got a bunch of money, because that was about 83 acres, like I said on the map. So this is a big deal right here. This fact right here, if that's true, fraud has been committed and some illegal things have happened with Playa Vista and the county. If not, then Playa Vista defrauded and committed fraud and embezzlement, or whatever you want to call it, with the state and using state funds. So this is a big issue right here. Anyway, I'm going to bust through the rest of this. It's just important stuff. This is the map in the harbor. Not much here. Here's the wetlands report, like I was telling you. Yep. There's 2 different copies of this, like I was showing you. Wait. This is the one for the 408. We already went over that, but they talked about that. I'm going to skip through that thing. Document 205 pages, so I'm just skipping through it. We already talked about the, there's the here's all their levee math on cubic yards of fill, and they're all over the place. They went from 3 million to 2.1, but my math is still, if they do all that excavating, it's double this, easy. So this is inaccurate. Anyway, of course they're going to lowball it, and then who's going to measure it, right? With all that shifting, these are all, things that can't be, they can be disputed because they can't be confirmed. So let me go through this thing. This shows the property claim again. That's why I'm tying that into what I already showed you with Playa Vista selling this thing that the counties, that the Army Corps document said that the county owned somehow, right? That's a big question. But the federal government condemned the land and they sued on it, and I showed the lawsuit. But how did the property line come over here to the levee and all that? And that's what Playa Vista sold to the state, the property boundary. That's the wetlands, the ecological reserve, Ballona Wetlands ecological reserve property boundary, and the title documents in the parcels reflect that. So how did they get all that? They didn't get the road, right? They didn't get the roads, but they got the channel all the way up. And the only way they got that was from Playa Vista. And how did Playa Vista get it from the county? right? And how did the county get it from the Army Corps and the Fed? And all this was condemned before by the feds as well. And that's another video. But anyway, importance with elevation. This is the Somas topo, I think. Hang on a second. This, right before the NOI came out for the Coastal Conservancy. And when you look at this thing, I've checked these and they're off. So I think those have to be reestablished because that affects where the water level is. And I also question the low water tide mark and the high water tide mark and that tidal prism as it relates to the land. Why that matters is when they butcher this open, if we can't stop them, all that water is going to come in. And if these elevations don't line up, like they've already altered 2 feet, then there may be more inundation and more excavation than they're even saying. So that's why that matters. So anyway, these are the standard. So this is gas lines they gotta move, and this is all the SoCal gas stuff. I'm gonna get into that. That's an alternative. This is a grading plan and levees. Again, this is all the levees built up high. See it there. This one actually shows how the levee will be, but it's still misleading. But you can see it's huge and a huge amount of material. But anyway, it's a kind of misleading. These are the levees. Yeah, these are the levees. That's all BS. Water will never be like that. These are the levee designs. They had to change them. Like I said, in 2009, the Corps had to update their guidelines for levees and vegetation because of Katrina. So the embankments they're calling are now massive. There's a different angle here and here, and then the toe's different. So that's why the levees are 150, 200 feet wide on the ones for the channel design now. They didn't have them that way before. They had them really stiff, straight up, stiffened with reinforced with steel and columns. I think they still need to do that, but that's why they cored all over that property with the levee plan. But anyway, the levees changed, so all the dirt they wanted to sell to the port, they have to use it if they get there. So that's why that matters. For example. So this is some examples of it, how it's supposed to look. Okay, now we're getting into something important. This is the agreement that the Army Corps has with the county on the permits for 404 and 408 for expedited review. I couldn't figure out why the Corps and the county were still acting like nothing was happening, and it's because they have this MOA. So I found the MOA that they entered into. This is it right here. And it talks about the restoration project. Remember, the date is 2 years after the NOI went out. And so they go round and round about it. Again, they say the project site's owned by the state, but then the county says they own it. I mean, the Corps said they own it, and now they don't. So, and again, since federal funding was used for the channel, you know, they can't do anything till the 408's done. So, there's just a lot of information in this document specific to the 408. So this is why there isn't a lot of Army Corps documentation. Some people avoided them and did CPRAs at the county, but this is why. And those CPRAs aren't even compliant because I have this, and they should have given it to those people that have did the CPRA. So that's pretty important. This is the mining operation when they do levees, what it looks like. This is from the Wetland Restoration Preliminary Design from PWA and ESA. So this is not my fabrication of what it's going to be. This is their example of what it's going to take and how they put, you know, stone and reinforcement, and that's what all this is. Riprap, and how they're going to mine it to do it. They're going to have to bring in material. It shows how they butcher the land. When you look at the wetlands right now, and it's all going to be like this, where's the wildlife? Where's all the creatures going to go, and the insects and everything? All the habitat's gone. You know, no one seems to care about that in this process, but you know, and these excavators are nothing compared to the bulldozers that it took to do all this. And so I just don't see it being evaluated properly on that level either, let alone all the cultural sites that are there and what happened to those. Maybe they're going to get dormant again to sell out like you did at Playa Vista, and let them butcher the land, tear out burials, and then plant them somewhere else at a place called Discovery Park that the Coastal Conservancy helped pay for with Playa Vista. Who knows? Anyway, a lot of butchering, dredging, looks like Malibu Creek, you know, this kind of stuff. So it's pretty disturbing. Anyway, this is the first amendment to that MOA under the Section 14 Rivers Harbors Act 1899, sorry, for the 408 proposals. Goes into the 214 Federal Water Resource Development Act as amended to 2000. That's the one that was done in 1944, the Flood Control Act. Which talks about the 408s, funding. They've been getting money, $500,000 not that long ago. This one goes into next year. So this is not something that's, you know, a minor deal. This is related to 408s only. And it's signed. Thor signed it. 2016, that was last year. Not even a year ago, they signed this amendment. So that's important. Here we go again. I think this is the original. You know, this is another amendment. Or this is the rest of that one. So it talks about the 408s and all that, and what they're supposed to do. This is something that someone should FOIA from these guys. Everyone's been FOIA in the wrong place, and they should FOIA this one. That's for John Davis. There you go, JD. Here's the contact people. Other people can FOIA too, and I'd recommend that. Miscellaneous. This is signed, you know, Feb 12/14. Gore signed it. Okay, priority proposals. First one, Ballona Wetlands Restoration Project. It's under this MOA, so we can't dispute that. It's there. This is a county document. Has some other ones, but this is the main one we're talking about. Now this is the draft, April 2016. Somehow they got the MRCCA involved up the road a little bit. I just put this one in here because it shows what they're doing with these 408s with the county. And there's no hearings on this. There's no notices. They're just doing this behind the scenes. it shows there's you know complicit. They're complicit in this with the feds, you know, and there's no notice from the county or from the feds on these. And here's the 408 for it. So where is this 408 application for the wetland? Right? That's the one for the blacktop I was talking about before. Here's the extension that we forced in August. So that was good because they had messed up with who was supposed to be involved. It partly was that deal that San Monica Bay Restoration deal did with the county, but it wasn't valid, so they had to reverse it. And I helped do that, and so they had to reissue this permit. We were talking about this excavation again. So here we go. The Ballona Creek levees were constructed by the Corps in the 1930s. So they built them. You know, it's a federal project, undisputed. And we know that in the USGS map of 1923, they were letting the water go into the wetlands like it was supposed to. So that's the end of this document in this video. It shows the 408 complicity with the Army Corps and you look at that, you don't see hardly any involvement with the Fish and Wildlife owner, state, you know, California Department of Fish and Wildlife involvement in this. They're supposed to own it and own the channel, and the county's just dealing with the Corps on it. So it's just very, very illegal and very crooked and unethical. And in all the enviro groups that are supporting it, I don't even think they've done the research to know what they're supporting. So I continue to object and oppose it, and it's from the TONGVA Nation, TATTN, and me, John Tommy Rosas, as a documented lineal descendant, both DNA and historical documentation in my genealogy. Thanks for watching the video. See you next time. Graphic I made, TATTN Media Graphic. Documentation for the freshwater areas that are there. And it also shows where the Ballona Channel ended. So I'm going to show, here's the wetlands. I'm going to show this graphic. I made a transparency. It's very old, and I wrote over it, but I imposed it on the Google Earth. And it's 1923. Not everything lines up, but the important things do. But you can see I've got it in a transparency atmospheric. Hi, it's John Tommy Rosas making another video on the Hi, it's John Tommy Rosas making another video on the Ballona Wetlands. And this one's on the 1923 This is a graphic I made, TATTN Media Graphics, on the documentation for the freshwater areas that are there. And it also shows where the Ballona Channel ended. Hang on, let me get up there. So I'm going to show, here's the wetlands. I'm going to show this graphic. I made a transparency. It's very old, and I wrote over it, but I imposed it on the Google Earth. And it's 1923. Not everything lines up, but the important things do. But you can see I've got it in a transparency, atmospheric. So it's CG, but there's some distorted line and stuff that you can get the main point of it. Ballona Wetlands, Ecological Reserve, EIS. The sheet map I'm going to use, the T sheet, is from the U.S. Coast Survey Maps of California. So I'm using that, and I'm also going to show you what was not shown by the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission. I call them the Santa Monica Bay Demolition Commission, and the Bay Foundation, and the Coastal Conservancy. They used the T sheets for their agenda, but they didn't show what I'm going to show you. Excuse me, it's on the same program. Okay, so let me just zoom in on this part. This is the original. That gives you some bearing where it is. You can see the wetlands is here, the marina, excuse me, and so forth. Hang on. So anyway, this is the map T143-2B, and I also am using the graphics that they did originally, but also excuse me, the ones that were added by a research team that made it more accurate. But those were not used if it didn't help the conservancy and the bulldozing, saltwater inundation, agenda, which is a lot of the enviro groups have weighed in for it. Most of them got money. I'll go into that later on another video, but this shows the original map. I'm going to leave it like that. So you can see where the wetlands is now. It's right here. Went into here, but they butchered it with Playa Vista. This is the Ballona Creek. This is the Centinela Creek. Of course, it didn't end there, but it was part of the wetland, and it didn't just start there. It went way back into here. So some of the additional features they put in weren't accurate. I also don't think this is totally accurate, that it went here and went over. And you'll see on what I'm going to show you why I feel that way. So I'm going to add the colors in of the estuarine habitats and the T sheet. Okay, so when you look at this, here is the Ballona Creek and another stream, just to give you some bearing. And it shows this open water section and the green is vegetated wetland. So these are graphics that were on the original drawings. They were outlined, but they weren't. So you can see it in here. They weren't colored. So this is the color version. It's just easier to understand, and including the labels. So I'm leaving those up. But it shows that this was all vegetated. And the red is basically the salt water portions of it. That you can see here. So what I'm doing is showing how the information wasn't used properly or accurately, and it was only used by the Coastal Conservancy and them and Bay Foundation to shore up their agenda. When you look at this, let me change the transparency there. When you look at that, I'm trying to show you the difference of where the salt is. They're claiming it was up in here, which I don't believe, but it could have been. But regardless of that, it does show how much green vegetated wetlands there was, which is all this, which was quite a bit. And so even if this was accurate, we know this is pretty accurate. Even if this was accurate, it doesn't justify, tearing all this open with a bulldozer to inundate the rest of the wetlands with salt water when it never had that. The grade and the let me put this up. The grade and the different labeling doesn't back up what they had, because when you look at this, they had this section here, and this is open water, it's fresh water. So this is also fresh water. So the freshwater sources were there. It just conflicts with what's known and what's been studied. But I think this was a possible area that wasn't salt. It was like this one, which is an intertidal flat. And I think this one was too, but I don't think it was intertidal like they're talking about it with the ocean. I think it was a flat with just fresh water that would hold like a pond more than it was, tied in with the seawater. And that's a long ways for it to go in that skinny, strip. And it just doesn't make sense. And this one doesn't make sense either. So some of it is not conclusive to me. And then they use it, of course, to justify their, their ways. But I'm going to get back to this. You see where this is fresh water. It doesn't add up that this would be tidal, nor does this, because here's the fresh water from the creek, the Ballona Creek, which is like the west fork of the LA River. And why would it all of a sudden go to intertidal I think the freshwater was actually coming down that way. It was intertidal somewhere else. Same with this one. I think this was tied in, and this was intertidal, only that the fresh water drained out of it. It wasn't tidally influenced, so I think they've got it labeled wrong. But when you look at it that way, it still doesn't justify what they're saying with this being open water in here, and you know, having the rest of it be vegetated wetland. It's not supported by the conclusions of salt water or salt pan, because it's just not like that. It wasn't like that. So this helps explain that in the agenda and what they didn't show. And I'm hoping that when you folks look at this, you'll see what we're looking at and the reasons why it should be left as a freshwater alternative, not bulldozed, not saltwater inundated, and have this be a feature of restoration, like I put in my video ahead of this one, where it's green, and like I said, some of this could be freshwater wetlands as well as over here. You can see where area A is, all this, and this part of B could be restored, including tearing this out and putting something decent in there and opening it up. It was supposed to be 25 acres larger, but you know, it's a collection area, so I think we can have a pump station here where this dumps into the Ballona Creek channel, and then have the water cleaned up so it's usable and more natural, and then redistribute it appropriately in these areas. And you saw the graphic I made on the other one. So anyway, that's about it. I just wanted to explain this map and the use of it, and how it wasn't really done in the way that it could have been to show the full information on this project that was done. And I think their name is on the bottom. It was one of these. Look down there. Yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah, it was a Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, and they developed those maps and the GIS and all that. Here it is right here, historical, ecological, and they have this one too, the watershed. But you can go on their website. It's sccwrp.org, and there's a lot of information on there. And it's not the same information that we're given. It was used in the reports. A lot of the reports that were done for the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve EIS and EIR didn't have these details, and they didn't use the coloring. So that's why I thought it was important to do this, and people could see it for themselves. So anyway, that's my 2 bits. Thank you. Like that. This right here is the overlay I made with the government 1923 survey and USGS map. That's what all this is. These are my writing and this is my graphic. But what I'm showing here, if you look carefully, this is the Ballona Creek. In 1923 and before, it was channeled just enough to get it past this one area. And right at the Culver Electric, where they used to run the trains, and some of that's still here, they had it dump off right here. This is fresh water. This is not salt water that now goes up that way because this is all so low. And it goes, and I actually got a measurement now, it's 2 miles from the shoreline at high tide up the Ballona Creek channel. So what's important about that is when they talk about restoration, in 1923 and actually before, about 1906 to 1909 and then 1920, they had various lawsuits and cases, so this got realigned and different things happened. But on this USGS map, what's important is the federal government determined that the channel should run and stop here, and this is their mark there for fresh water that comes down is let go into the freshwater wetlands that was already existing. It did not go through into the, like it does now, into the marina. Let me make the transparency go so you can see what I'm talking about. See, now it goes, and then the high and low tides come up it, right? So that's what I'm saying is that before, see the difference right here? Right at area A, right here, you can see that creek line. And so the original Ballona Creek was here, then they channeled it, but they still dumped the fresh water here. They did not mix it or inundate this with more salt water like they want to do in alternative 1, 2, and 3. This is about fresh water. What's important on that is that if it's restoration and the Army Corps and the federal government felt like it was important for these wetlands, and this is their marks, to stay that way, here was a freshwater source. And we had the Sentinel Creek that came through too, which is basically right here. So the water might be here, but this is actually lower, and it used to go towards Playa Vista, which is all this right here and down here. So this was very low, and all the wetland markings, this is all fresh water. And then you can also see the saltwater little channels that were here for the estuary. So really the estuary, which is a salt and freshwater mix, is in this area, way down here. This is way down here. And so, and when you look at the transparency, let me back it off over what's there now, right? Where the salt pan is and this and that, that's pretty much how they drew it, right? Let me change the transparency again. But they only had the salt pan here and maybe here. But for this video, what's important is that you see that there was a major saltwater marsh area. It did not have the freshwater marsh up in here, not saltwater like they want to do in alternative 1. So this shows that it was existing, and that the Army Corps in their graphics, in their map, and their design and everything to dump the water right here was for fresh water. So that's why in my graphic I'm saying 1923 USGS shows freshwater wetlands, estuary, and freshwater source, sorry, misspelled it, from Ballona Creek. This is still really actually a creek, even though it was channelized. It did not go to the ocean like I explained, and it also shows the saltwater areas which are down here, right? This is all, undisputed saltwater area. But for them to say they're restoring up in here in area A, which is all the way to here, and pretty much straight down to here, again, look at the graphic transparency under Google Earth. Here's area A. So they want to rip all this out and then have that be saltwater treated, and it was never like that. And what's important about this video and what I'm explaining is that it shows that this was fresh water before, but it was made purposely freshwater restored again by the freshwater restoration of the channel. So they can't say that they're restoring anything. If they're going to restore it, it should be to this alignment and this source of water, which we can get from Playa Vista's freshwater forest right here. You know, it's right here actually, sorry. It's right here, and we can, I'm going to make a graphic on the pumping, but we can restore that freshwater source. So, what does that mean? In the EIS, we have to go for the freshwater alternative, because this proves that it needs to be back in here like it was. I'm going to try to change that transparency a little bit. Back in this area, like I'm saying, just like it shows here, you can see I've got this lined up with Google Earth the best I can. Jefferson and the creek don't line up, but this intersection is pretty much lined up dead on. So you can see that this had originally fresh water that we know historically, but also back to 1923, which really isn't, you know, although it's, you know, 94 years, but that's what was supposed to, you know, continue. And I think that's what we have to hold to. And the Army Corps made this determination. So they can't get permits to tear in the 408 scheme they made with the county and the 404 with the Fish and Wildlife and the BWER here to change it into salt water. That's this fraud. You got that. Yeah. So what I have here is the alternative one. I'm doing the opaque on that. And you can see where they want to inundate this with salt water. But this will not be what was there before. That's my point. You can see their alternative, and then you can see what was there before existing. And this is my polygon that I show that this is basically a freshwater area, according to their old map, which I already showed you, from 1923. So this is pretty significant, I think. And when we go back to this alternative one overlay, you can see that where they're jumping, where they're saying flow here is fraud, because the salt water will be there. There's never going to be any flow that way except for the tide. This is not a freshwater flow. They say Ballona Creek flow like it's coming down, but where's the source? Yeah, it's inundated with salt water, and that's why this whole area, let me get rid of this thing. This whole area will be, this green area is all going to be in salt water, because we know the tides go up to 10 feet, and they're going to have to dig this. I did some math on that. It's quite a bit of material. I'm closer to my 6 to 9 million cubic yards of material. So that's the deal with this one. The saltwater estuary definitely is in here, right, where these things are. Okay. And what I'm saying is that, and there was a blend in here. You know, the salt pan goes over here. So yeah, it moved around with storms, and then how much water came down the channel here, right? Fresh water in here, and it's going to this freshwater area, the wetlands. This is all fresh water here. Centennial Creek's right here. Water went this way, went this way. You know, it mingled and created. That's the estuary, mingled there. But this area A part, you know, it's fresh water. This whole area it had to be predominantly fresh water, and that's why their whole scheme is not just wrong, it's not honest with what is historically documented. And to me, that's the phony part of their wetlands restoration. When the salt water, the fresh water used to come right through here, it never went like it did now, and that would be restoration. 1923 map, you can see on the graphic. Thank you, and please support in the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve, EIS, CIR, the freshwater alternative to be made. They haven't done one, and to not approve or use the alternative with saltwater, because that is not restoration for this area. None of this. None of this has salt pan. This is all fresh water, and we should keep it that way. So thank you very much. Bye. That's John Tommy Rosas making another video. The graphic I made, TATTN Media Graphics. I'm going to show this graphic. I made a transparency. It's very old, and I wrote over it, but I imposed it on the Google Earth. And it's 1923. Not everything lines up, but the important things do. So it's 3D, but there's some distorted lines and stuff, but you can get the main point. Let me leave it like that. Transparency. This right here is the overlay I made with the government 1923 survey and USGS map. That's what all this is. These are my writing, and this is my graphic. Carefully, this is the Ballona Creek. In 1923 and before, it was channeled just enough to get it past this one area. And right at the Culver Electric, where they used to run the train through, and some of that's still here, they had it dumped off right here. This is fresh water. This is not salt water that now goes up that way, because this is all so low, and it goes, and I actually got a measurement now, it's 2 miles from the shoreline at high tide up the Ballona Creek channel. So what's important about that is when they talk about restoration, in 1923 and actually before, about 1906 to 1909, and then 1920, they had various lawsuits and cases, so this got realigned and different things happened. But on this USGS map, what's important is the federal government determined that the channel should run and stop here, and this is their mark there for fresh water that comes down, is let go into the freshwater wetlands that was already existing. It did not go through into the, like it does now, into the marina. Let me make the transparency go so you can see what I'm talking about. See, now it goes, and then the high and low tides come up it, right? So that's what I'm saying, is that before, see the difference right here? Right at area A here, you can see that creek line. And so the original Ballona Creek was here, and then they channeled it, but they still dumped the fresh water here. They did not mix it or inundate this with more salt water like they want to do in alternative 1, 2, and 3. This is about fresh water. But what's important on that is that if it's restoration, and the Army Corps and the federal government felt like it was important for these wetlands, and this is their marks, to stay that way, here was a freshwater source. And we had the Sentinella Creek that came through too, which is basically right here. So the water might be here, but this is actually lower, and it used to go towards Playa Vista, which is all this right here and down here. So this is very low, and all the wetland markings, this is all fresh water. And then you can also see the saltwater little channels that were here for the estuary. So really the estuary, which is a salt and freshwater mix, is in this area, way down here. This is way down here. And so, and when you look at the transparency, let me back it off over what's there now, right? Where the salt pan is and this and that, that's pretty much how they drew it, right? They only had the salt pan here and maybe here. So this shows that it was existing, and that the Army Corps in their graphics, in their map, and their design and everything to dump the water right here was for fresh water. So that's why in my graphic I'm saying 1923 USGS shows freshwater wetlands, estuary, and freshwater source, sorry, misspelled it, from Ballona Creek. This was still really actually a creek, even though it was channelized. It did not go to the ocean like I explained, and it also shows the saltwater areas which are down here, right? This is all, undisputed saltwater area. But for them to say they're restoring up in here in area A, which is all the way to here, and pretty much straight down to here, again, look at the graphic transparency under Google Earth. Here's area A. So they want to rip all this out and then have that be saltwater intruded, and it was never like that. And what's important about this video and what I'm explaining is that it shows that this was freshwater before, but it was made purposely freshwater restored again by the freshwater restoration of the channel. So they can't say that they're restoring anything. If they're going to restore it, it should be to this alignment and this source of water, which we can get from Playa Vista's freshwater forest right here. It's right here actually, sorry. It's right here, and we can, I'm going to make a graphic on the pumping, but we can restore that freshwater source. So, what does that mean? In the EIS, we have to go for the freshwater alternative, because this proves that it needs to be back in here like it was. I'm trying to change that transparency a little bit. Back in this area, like I'm saying, just like it shows here, you can see I've got this lined up with Google Earth the best I can. Jefferson and the creek don't line up, but this intersection is pretty much lined up dead on. So you can see that this had originally fresh water, we know historically, but also back to 1923, which really isn't, although it's 94 years, but that's what was supposed to continue, and I think that's what we have to hold to. And the Army Corps made this determination, so they can't give permits to tear in the 408 scheme they made with the county and the 404 with the Fish and Wildlife and the BWER here to change it into salt water. That's just fraud. So what I have here is the alternative one. I'm doing the opaque on that. And you can see where they want to inundate this with salt water. But this will not be what was there before. That's my point. You can see their alternative, and then you can see what was there before existing. And this is my polygon that I showed that this was basically a freshwater area, according to their old map, which I already showed you, from 1923. So this is pretty significant, I think. And when we go back to this alternative one, you can see that where they're jumping, where they're saying flow here is fraud, because the salt water will be there. There's never going to be any flow that way except for the tide. This is not a freshwater flow. They say Ballona Creek flow like it's coming down, but where's the source? Yeah, it's inundated with salt water. This green area is all going to be in salt water, because we know the tides go up to 10 feet. And they're going to have to dig this. I did some math on that. It's quite a bit of material. I'm closer to my 6 to 9 million cubic yards of material. So I'm going to put the salt water in green. Our estuary definitely is in here, right, where these things are. Okay. And what I'm saying is that, and there is a blend in here. The salt pan goes over here. So yeah, it moved around with storms, and then how much water came down the channel here, right? And what I'm saying is that this is fresh water in here, and it's going to this freshwater area, the wetlands. This is all fresh water here. Centinela Creek's right here. Water went this way, it went this way. You know, it mingled and created, that's the estuary, mingled there. But this area A part, you know, it's fresh water. This whole area it had to be predominantly fresh water, and that's why their whole scheme is not just wrong, but it's not honest with what is historically documented. And to me, that's the phony part of their wetlands restoration. When the salt water, the fresh water used to come right through here, it never went like it did now, and that would be restoration. 1923 map, you can see on the graphic. Thank you, and please support in the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve, BIS, CIR, the freshwater alternative to be made. They haven't done one, and to not approve or use the alternative with salt water, because that is not restoration for this area. None of this. None of this has salt pan. This is all fresh water, and we should keep it that way. So thank you very much. Bye.